All right, it's time to settle the debate. What's going to make you the most money? Should you reinvest into the stock market or reinvest into your business? And this is getting real, y'all, because this is a collaboration. I've got Joesph from Bowtie Nation, and he has taken the stance that you make more money by reinvesting into the stock market, and I'm taking the stance that you should reinvest into your business, and I'm going to share my reasons why. We're going to find out all of that and more right now. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel, Wealth Hacker Labs, the channel dedicated to teaching you new ways to grow wealth that is not taught to you in schools or by your parents. I am your gracious host, Jeff Rose, and I was excited to be a part of this when Joe reached out to me and asked what stance I would love to take, and he wanted to take the stance on reinvesting back in the stock market, and I'm like, all right, dude, you do that, and I'm gonna do reinvesting back into the business. Now, being a financial planner, having been involved in investing for a number of years, like I could take both stances and I could argue both points, but I will say, especially coming from the wealth hacker mindset, I have made so much more by reinvesting back into my business. Like, there is no comparison. I'll share some real life examples at the end of this video, so stay tuned. Also find out my strategy and the way I go about deciding how I reinvest has to do with ICE. That's correct, the ICE method. So you're gonna find out what that is too. All right, so in Joseph's video, he shares his 3 reasons why reinvesting back in the stock market makes so much more sense. And if you need to watch that video first to kind of see where he's coming from, to see his points, his arguments, be sure to check out the link in the description. It's a great video, a great channel. Be sure to subscribe. He's got a ton of content on investing, entrepreneurship, and just a lot of good stuff. So the first point that Joesph mentions, his reasoning for reinvesting back in the stock market is, in a business, you are not guaranteed of future profits.
Reinvesting in your business is no guarantee of more profits. In fact, most entrepreneurs feel obligated to reinvest.
So his argument is that, yes, you could reinvest back into your business, but you're not guaranteed that there are future profits to be had, to be made. And yeah, like, I totally agree with that, like 100%. But what I would also argue, especially reinvesting back into the stock market, is you are not guaranteed future growth. Just because the investment that you place, whether it be a stock, a mutual fund, or ETF, just because it's done amazing the last 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, doesn't mean that it's going to be an awesome investment for the next 3, 5, 10 years. You think of companies like Kmart or Blockbuster Video or Motorola that had a tremendous run, but now, like, they're not even part of the conversation. So yeah, you're not guaranteed profits reinvesting back into a business, but you're also not guaranteed return reinvesting back in the stock market. As part of his first point, Joesph mentions that he feels that business owners feel pressured to reinvest back into the business, and that could lead to wasteful spending.
In fact, most entrepreneurs feel obligated to reinvest. They feel pressured by all the business gurus to follow the rules. It's like a golden rule, and you'll see all kinds of rules here when you listen to these gurus.
And it sure can. I know from my perspective, I have reinvested back into my business on things that didn't quite work out. I have wasted money on newspaper ads. I have wasted money on brochures. I've wasted money on taking client or potential clients out to dinner or lunch. I mean, there are so many things I have reinvested back in the business that yield negative return. But in the same breath, like, I have reinvested in ways that have yielded amazing results. And I think of other seminars that worked out amazing, doing webinars, different marketing strategies that I've implemented that just, I mean, not only did I get all my money back, but I mean, it was 3x, 5x, sometimes 10x. And the thing about reinvesting back to the business, like, you don't always know what's going to work out, but you have to be willing to try and experiment new things. All right, the second point that Joesph mentions is that reinvesting back into a business for the sake of growing, just to grow, especially if you're sacrificing happiness and joy for doing so. And I have been surrounded by this type of individual, this type of business owner, that all they do is want to grow. And what ends up happening is that they are working even more into the business. Instead of working 8, 10 hours days, like, they're working 12, 14-hour days. They're working evenings, they're working weekends. And I can totally I totally relate to that, and I totally get that. Like, you don't reinvest just for the sake of growing, and I'll share some of my ideas or strategies on how you can reinvest into your business and grow, but not sacrificing happiness because of it. All right, Joseph's third point for not reinvesting back into your business is to diversify your assets.
I know a lot of entrepreneurs, friends of mine, that would be completely wiped out if their business failed. They've run a solid business with good profits for years, but they've just plowed everything back into it. They've got no other assets to depend on or to rely on. You know, another hallmark of today's internet age is just that constant competition and change. You know, some of these changes you can't foresee or stop, and good business models go extinct every single day. This means you've got to diversify your financial assets, so God forbid if that change comes, then you're at least partially protected from it.
You know, when you think about diversification, especially in investing in the stock market, that means you don't put all your money in one stock. You don't put all your money into one mutual fund. You diversify. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You know, you put your assets in different places. And with your business, if you keep reinvesting back into your business, there is that potential that all of your money, all of your net worth, all of your capital is tied up into this illiquid asset that you can't sell. Now, the part of that I want to push back on is just because you're reinvesting back into your business doesn't mean that you can't diversify where your money is. So as an example, like I have my online business where inside of that, like one of the main pieces is my financial blog, Good Financial Sense. So yes, I could reinvest back into that business and all my assets are tied up and I can't sell and all that fun stuff. But the reality is that with my online business, just because I'm generating revenue from that site and primarily from affiliate conversions and display ads and CPC ads. So that's a main bulk of the revenue, but I could reinvest back into that business, but now develop my own courses or develop a membership site. Basically, you can reinvest back into your business and diversify the revenue streams. And if you think of, let's say like a chiropractor, where most of their revenue is generated from meeting clients and cracking their backs and all that stuff, but they can also add a nutrition line that maybe they can offer to their clients. Maybe there is some sort of health and wellness training that they can market and sell. And maybe there's a healthy living group where they're sharing recipes and workout tips. Either way, like there's different revenue streams that you can have within the business that is still diversifying where your income is coming from. So just because you're reinvesting back into the business doesn't mean that you're reinvesting back into the same things that are producing that income, that revenue. One of the trickiest reasons why it's hard to decide, do you reinvest back into the business or do you reinvest back in the stock market is because it's hard to calculate what is the ROI, what is the return on investment when you're reinvesting back into the business. When you put your money in the stock market, if you're doing the S&P 500 Vanguard fund, you know that the S&P 500 is average anywhere from 8 to 11%. So you get a sense of what you should expect and make over the next 10, 20, 30 years. But going back to Joe's original point where there is no guarantee of future profits, it's hard to know when you reinvest back into the business, like what are you going to make? Like what is the return on your investment for whatever that is? And obviously there are so many different ways that you can reinvest back into your business. And this is where, for me, this is where the ICE method, this is where this came to be and just really helped me to kind of break down and understand where I should be reinvesting my money. So what is the ICE method? All right, so let's break this down. The ICE method, I stands for impact. So what is something that you can do right now? What is something that you can reinvest right now that there is no barrier to entry? It's something that you can execute almost immediately and you know that you're going to have some results from it. So yeah, you could dabble in Facebook ads. Like yeah, you could try a newspaper ad and yes, there's ease of execution, but you don't know if that's really going to work. So take a look at what is currently generating revenue right now. Like where are you making money? Like where is that money coming from? Now for me, like with my financial planning practice, whenever I was trying to grow it, one of the things that I knew had success is because other financial planners were doing the exact same thing, and that was doing seminars. So the way that I reinvested back into my business was I would rent out a local restaurant. I would then send out invitations. I would send out mailers trying to get people to come in and listen to me talk. Can you imagine that? Trying to listen to me talk while they're trying to eat dinner? But I would spend anywhere from a couple hundred to a couple thousand in the mailers and the invitations and just the restaurant and the meals. But seeing that other advisors had had success, where I knew that I could implement that, it would have an impact, that's where I was able to reinvest back in the business and saw immediate results. A good friend of mine who is a business owner, he owned his own photography studio and he wanted to reinvest back into his business. And for him, what he felt would have the greatest impact was having upgraded equipment, so new camera, new lens, better lighting, but he also wanted to reinvest back into his studio. So he wanted new backdrops and just some new furniture that made his studio more inviting. Now, did he know that that would increase his profits, grow his revenue? He didn't, but he was able to visit plenty of other studios and see other photographers seeing their work, that he realized that if he wanted to compete with the other photographers out there, like, he had to step up his game and he had to reinvest back into his business. So he did just that. He bought his equipment, he upgraded his studio, and then sure enough, like, his studio took off. He's just through word of mouth, he started getting bookings from all over the place and his schedule was full. So yes, reinvesting back into his business where he was confident that it would have the greatest results paid off. So I stands for impact, C stands for confidence, E stands for ease of execution. And I've already mentioned this before, but what is something that you can implement today? What's something that you can implement tomorrow that you don't have to have a 3-month launch strategy before you actually implement whatever it is this is that you're reinvesting back into your business? So is there something that you can do tomorrow that's going to generate profits? A personal example that I can share is when I reinvested back into my blog, Good Financial Sense. So I already had a very good looking web design, but at the time my book was coming out, Soldier Finance, that book right back there. And I just felt like the site needed an update. It needed a refresh, just needed like a fresh coat of paint. So paid a designer, developer, it's about $8,000 to relaunch this new website. Like, the website wasn't broke, like, it was working, but I just felt like it was what I needed, and all I had to do is task that out to a designer and developer. So I was confident, I knew the impact was going to be there, and it was ease of execution because I didn't have to do anything. I just had to hire the person and send them the check, and they took care of it. So ROI, like, it was pretty much overnight, like, I noticed an uptick in traffic, which then was an uptick in revenue. And then all of a sudden I started getting more media mentions and media requests. And it was by far like one of the best reinvestments back into my business that I executed on. Another thing that I executed on with my business, reinvesting, was through business coaching. And I'm gonna have another video where I share a little bit more in depth how this worked out. But basically, over a 3-year period, by reinvesting back into the business, into myself, into business coaching, I reinvested approximately $27,000 over a 3-year period. And that reinvestment, after 3 years, was yielding me an increase of revenue of $500,000 more per year. You heard that, right? I reinvested $27,000, and then at the time I was making $500,000 more per year ongoing, and that has only gone up since then. So those are just a few of the examples I've been able to reinvest back into my business. But the thing I really wanted to address, especially point number 2, where he says, you don't just want to reinvest to grow for the sake of growing and sacrifice happiness.
Reinvesting in your business, a lot of times it means more work and less happiness. It's kind of a cruel joke, but we entrepreneurs, we're driven by that ambition and those goals, but it so often just makes our lives harder.
One of the best things and greatest things that you can reinvest into are efficiencies. So how do you do more? How do you make more? How do you get more results? By working less. And one of the ways I've been able to do that is to identify where do I need to be spending my time? Like, where does Jeff Rose need to be spending his time generating the most revenue for the business? And what are other areas of the business that I don't need to be spending my time on? So when I'm able to identify what those areas are, then the way that I reinvest is by outsourcing or hiring or delegating, finding people that excel in those different areas that frankly, I don't like to do, but even worse, like I'm just not good doing them. So why would I waste my time editing or web design or other stuff like that? That's just not my thing. So one of the greatest things that you can reinvest back into is to identify how to be more efficient. That's why I'm not working 40 hours a week. That's why I work when I want and I travel when I want. And that's because I've got a team that is great at what they do, and I spend my time when I have to doing what I enjoy most. One example is recording YouTube videos in my home office. I love this. I love being able to help out others achieve accelerated wealth. I love people just taking charge of their life and financial ownership and all that fun stuff. So like, this is where I thrive, and this is why I can do this, and my business continues to grow and I have a lot of fun with it. So that's my arguments why I think reinvesting back into the business is going to make you much more return, much more, even be more satisfied than just going to the stock market. But anyway, Joe, he had some good points and he's got some other good content. So be sure to check out his channel. And if you like this video, you know what to do. Give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, subscribe, share it, all that fun stuff. We want to make sure that we are encouraging others to be a part of Wealth Hacker Nation. All right, y'all, this is Jeff Rose reminding you that it's your money, it's your life, and only you can make it awesome. Until next time, peace.